having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome back to the show, my friends. I am your host, Eric Szilagyi. If you've had an uncomfortable experience and you'd like to share it here on the show, please get a hold of me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. The world wants to hear your story. They want to hear your cryptid experiences. So please reach out to me and let's get yours on the next episode of Uncomfortable. If you haven't yet, make sure to like us on Facebook and Instagram, both at Uncomfortable Podcast 65. And once you've had a chance to listen to an episode or two, please make sure and leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you can. That alone is the most important thing you can do to help get this show out in front of more people. And with more people listening, that means more great experiences coming your way. If video is more your thing, then make sure to subscribe to Uncomfortable Podcast on YouTube, where you can get the video version of most shows, like tonight's. If that's where you listen to us, please make sure to click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you are notified with each and every new release. Take a minute and check out the Uncomfortable link tree. It's the single best place that you can find anything and everything uncomfortable all in one spot. The link for that is in the show notes below. Tonight, I have what promises to be a great show for you. Author Betsey Kulakowski, who is a very prolific writer. Currently has 11 books, currently 7 books, 11 to 12 at the end of it all. The Veritas Codex it sounds very interesting. We're going to get into it, but we've got some other stuff my favorite subject. We're going to get into that, and we're going to talk about the books first. So if you're ready, let's get into it. So if you will, please give a warm, uncomfortable welcome to author Betsey Kulakowski. Betsy, welcome to Uncomfortable.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being on the show.
Boy, did I screw the pooch on that intro. Good.
It's all good.
My God. I think I'd never done this before. Oh, Betsy, hey, thanks for getting back to me in such a short order. It wasn't too long ago that that's not true, because before the move, I messaged you, and then the move kind of moved up a little bit. And then I've been absent from the podcast scene for a couple of maybe 3 weeks, I think it is. But we just, when she got here and we started digging into the house and what had to be thrown out, and oh my God, it's just been one thing after another. There hasn't been a moment's rest. So actually to sit down and be able to do an interview
I totally know what that's like. We just moved about 6 months ago and moved into my mother-in-law's house that was already full. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, well, my house was still full from the passing of my mom a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And there was a big thing about it. I didn't know if I was going to be able to keep the house or not keep the house, or if I was going to have to sell it, or if I was going to go to the nursing home and all that stuff. So there was a lot of things that remained undone until this past year. And then I just kind of said, you know what? I don't want to deal with all this. and then she says, I'm coming. And I said, oh shit, I got to deal with all this. And fortunately she's been a real trooper about it and has done a buttload of work here. So the place is shaping up nicely and life is getting back under control. So
it's a good feeling when you get to that point.
It is. I've seen a lot of changes in the house, just the decorations. It's no longer a bachelor pad with a guy who obviously didn't care anymore. It now has character and everything looks very nice. So I'm pleased and excited to see what else we have in store.
Yay. It's good to be settled.
Still a lot of work to go yet though.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
But we got the backyard. The pond is going. We've got a nice space out there that we can go sit out and relax and just kind of take it easy. So that part is important, and I'm glad for that. So
yeah, it's a plus.
It is. Betsy, let's tell me about the book series.
All right. Well, the Veritas Codex series follows the adventures of Dr. Lauren Grayson. She's a biological anthropologist who has a cable television show. Might sound familiar. And they go out into the woods and into the world in search of answers to the world's greatest mysteries. So in the first book, they are at Mount St. Helens and they're looking for Bigfoot. And in the middle of the investigation, Lauren disappears, but all the evidence suggests that she was abducted by Bigfoot. But when she comes back, she's injured. She has no memory of what happened. So was she abducted by Bigfoot? Was it aliens? Pity she can't remember. The real mystery becomes what happened to Lauren. Each book is its own new episode. The storyline flows through book one. It's best, in my opinion, to read them in order. But book 2 is the Jaguar Queen, where they investigate the Mayan apocalypse. Book 3 is the Alien Accord. So if anybody's into aliens, that's a good one to read. Book 4 is the Devil's Codex, and there's pages missing in the Devil's Codex. And Lauren has to find those missing pages before the devil gets his hands on them, or there will be hell to pay. So that one goes a little dark, and they travel over the world. Every book is set in a different location. Book 5 gets into Templar lore. It's the Lost Templar.
Oh, interesting.
Book 6 is the Pirate's Curse, which I threw everything in on that one. The Bermuda Triangle, time travel, Atlantean lore, anything I could think of, pirates, mermaids, all the fun stuff. It's in that book.
And it's outstanding.
Yeah. And then book 7 is The King's Ransom. And that recently won top published book at WriterCon, which is an annual writing conference that I attend every year. And it follows the team as they go looking for Saddam Hussein's missing Stargate.
What?
Yes. That one blows everybody's mind.
Saddam Hussein's missing Stargate?
There is conspiracy theorists who believe he actually had a Stargate that he intended to use as a weapon.
Where do you come up with these ideas?
I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of exploring on my own. I grew up on television shows like In Search Of.
I thought you were going to tell me you grew up on television. I'm like, what were you in?
Well, I've been in a few movies, just as an extra, nothing major, no SAG card or anything like that. But I grew up watching these shows, and I still love things like Destination Truth, Expedition Unknown. Anything on the Travel Channel, Discovery Channel. That's kind of where I got the idea for this series. I was watching Destination Truth back in 2008, 2009. 4:00 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. And it was the only thing on. So I'm watching this show and I'm thinking, we're 6 or 7 seasons into this and they never find anything.
None of those shows ever find anything.
I know. But then I thought, well, what if they did? But it turns out that it's a truth they could never tell. And that became the nexus for my series. That's kind of the theme that goes through everything is they find all these things, but they're truths that could never be told.
Now, when you first started going through the different books quickly, was I catching the same name? Is there a main character that?
Yeah, Lauren. She's the main character, Dr. Lauren Grayson. And
was she the woman that was abducted or could have been abducted?
Yeah.
Okay, so she obviously got out of that situation.
Of course, yes.
All right,
I'm a happy ending girl. I was happy.
Not to spoil anything for anybody, but
yeah, for sure.
Interesting. I love the fact that in just that short span of time that you were speaking, you covered my love for Bigfoot, my love for UFOs, my early fascination with Atlantis, the Bermuda Triangle. All you nailed all of them.
Good. That was the goal. If you're into Ghost, Book 8, I'll give your listeners a little teaser. Book 8 is currently with the publisher, undergoing edits, and it is set at the Stanley Hotel and gets into some ghosts and demons.
Really? At the Stanley Hotel?
Yeah.
Now, I got to ask you a question here because, all right, so my listeners know that sometimes I take the scenic route to get.
It's the best way to go.
To a point. So buckle up. So the Stanley Hotel, made famous by Stephen King. I'm going to ask, I want to know how can you use that name? Is that open domain, or did you have to get permission to use that, or?
Well, it's an actual place,
Right.
and of course I fictionalize it to a certain degree.
Okay.
But it's not like trademark. I mean, I'm sure the company is trademarked, but just to say that somebody was there in a book, it's like saying somebody's in San Diego.
All right.
So you can use things like that. You can use real places. So no, I haven't gone through any kind of process like that. Now, if my publisher comes in and says, Betsy, we need to do something about that, then I will. But
right.
But it's mentioned in the first book, and there's a scene in the first book, and I'm the queen of bringing things full circle.
Okay.
So something that happened in the first book will come full circle in the eighth book. So
you've heard the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Yes.
Okay. So
I'm at 2.
Here's my 7 degrees, but it's not with Kevin Bacon. So the Stanley Hotel thing comes up, and yesterday I see a post from Stephen King, who was giving kudos to the producer and filmmaker who they're a pair of brothers out of Australia, Danny and Michael Philippou. And they just released a movie not even a month ago, I don't believe, and it's called Bring Her Back. So Bring Her Back is it's beautifully shot. It's got everything you want in a good horror movie. But the minute that the opening hits you, it's a bummer. It's a downer. I don't want anybody to not go see it because it's a very good movie. But prepare not to feel good once you walk out of the movie, because it is one of those. I kind of liken it to the movie Midsommar and Hereditary. Just not feel good movies at all. Extremely well done. Fantastic job. I know Michael and Danny, the brothers. Danny actually spent last 2 Thanksgivings ago, spent his Thanksgiving with me in my home, because one of the guys that works on the film and worked on the film the previous release is my daughter's boyfriend.
Cool.
So he got hired by the Filippo brothers to go to Australia to film Talk to Me, and then most recently this one. So my daughter and he know them very well, and then by proxy I got to meet them, and now Stephen King has kudos them on all social media, telling them what a wonderful movie it was. So,
oh, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Any kind of kind words from the master.
It's impressive. I
don't think anyone would say no to that.
I was able to keep it all together and make it through the story without screwing up. But
yeah,
I got all.
I'll tell you something funny. When I first started publishing, when I first was really getting into the point where I was about ready to. Somebody actually asked me, are you going to use a pen name? Because let's face it, Kulakowski is not really an easy name.
Right.
And I said, why would I do that? Because my last name puts me on the same shelf with King and Koontz.
Oh, yeah. True.
So that was strategic.
Yeah. Yeah. Good call there.
Yes.
So this series of books,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of paranormal thriller.
Yes, that's the genre that we're targeting. It's supernatural suspense, paranormal thriller. The first review I got from somebody said, "Oh, well, it was cute," and I'm like, "That's not what I want." So I went back in and made some changes. I didn't want it to be cute. It's okay for parts of it to be cute, but I didn't want the book to be cute. It's not what it was intended to be. It was intended to be a roller coaster thrill ride that leaves you on the edge of your seat. So that's a thriller in my book.
Yeah. Any film options for any of the?
Not yet, but I did pitch it to an agent who was an acquiring agent for Universal Television before it published. And she said, Betsy, that sounds like a great story. She said, the only thing is you have to write it and you have to get out there and sell it. So I'm in the selling mode now. I've written the books. I've got the first 7 are published. 8 is with the publisher. I've already written book 11 and I've written part of book 12, but I decided to wait and see what changed in editing before I finished book 12. So, there's no end in sight. That's just kind of where I'm going to find a natural, maybe take a break, do something different. I've got a couple other projects I'm working on. But I have a feeling that I could very easily do spinoffs with the different characters. There's so many rich, wonderful characters in the series. I could take this so many different directions.
Well, I think I'm going to have to ask for your information, because I think I'm gonna go ahead and get these for my girl.
Be terrific.
I think they're the fact that it has a central character and
she's strong and she's gutsy, and I wanted a strong female lead when I was writing it, because all the thriller books at the time, 2008, 2009, all the thriller leads were men. And there was really no opportunity for a woman who could get out there, get her hands dirty, get a fish out of the lake and bite its head off and eat it. I mean, that's Lauren. She can do all of that. She's not afraid of doing the field work, and she's a scientist at her core. So women in STEM, check. Strong female protagonist, check. A little bit of a love interest. Oh, yes, please.
Well, when I was raising my kids, I raised my son to always make sure that he protected his sister, no matter what.
Yep.
Don't care what happens. Don't care who's yelling at who's wrong, who's being an ass, who's not. When it comes down to it, you take care of your sister.
Yes.
And consequently, my daughter, I taught her to never be reliant on a man for your value. And thankfully she has run with that, and she has a wonderful, healthy relationship with her boyfriend. But she is a very strong, independent, and sassy woman.
Yes. My girl is the same way.
But it's funny that, so like I said, my girlfriend, I think we're 6, might be 7 weeks now that she's been here living with me. And quite some time ago, I had asked her if she ever watched Game of Thrones. And she had not. She had heard of it, but she never watched it. And I said, oh my God, we got to watch this when you get here. So it had been several years since I've seen Game of Thrones. So the really nice thing about it is we've been watching a couple episodes a night now for, I think, 6. I think we might be in the 7th season now. And a lot of things I have forgotten. And even some of the bigger stuff I forget until I'm like seconds away and I'm like, oh shit, this is when they, and it's weird when you watch it though, because it puts so many of the men out front as these powerful kings and leaders and lords, and they're the ones off fighting the wars and everything. But when you boil it down, you've got Sansa, who was a mouse of a woman, when she was a child, and she's this strong, crazy, just out there. Then you got Arya, who's this young badass who doesn't care about anything other than getting revenge. And even the queen is not a likable woman at all, but I mean, you really have to admire how strong these female leads are. It's just, and when you really pay attention to it, I mean, they kind of steal the show.
They do. They do.
It was written in such a way that, I mean, the surface, you're getting all the male, all the testosterone, all the fighting and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But to drive the story and the women that really end up being the difference in everything, it's the chicks, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Girls get the job done. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the Veritas Codex, you mentioned the one book about the alien.
Yes.
How does that follow any of the mythology that we as listeners subscribe to, as far as kind of current events?
Oh yeah. Yeah. The true story behind that one is that I had gone on a writing cruise before I'd ever published anything. And I had to submit a book, and we were going to workshop it. And I had written the Veritas Codex for practice. I never intended for anybody to ever see it, so I could be as outlandish and crazy as I wanted to be. And there's a little bit of alien activity at the beginning of that book that has kind of started to build. And again, I'm the queen of coming full circle. But as I was pitching this book on this writing cruise, one of the guys that was a coach, who was a stand-up comedian, great guy, said, yeah, Lauren needs a brother or a sister that's just the fly in her ointment. And I'm like, well, she doesn't have any sisters. She has 6 brothers. He's like, well, pick one. So I decided that her brother, Michael, who is a radio telescope engineer for NASA, he's a contractor, was going to be the fly in her ointment. If she got a PhD, he was going to get 2. He was the captain of the football team, walk on for OU football. There's a whole backstory with Michael. And he's just always been, picking at her. And he's always said that he was going to find aliens before she did. So in the beginning of that book, the very opening line is, aliens definitely exist. And I made that promise to the reader right up front, that in this world, aliens definitely exist. So Lauren's brother is working with a former cosmonaut from Russia on these signals that are being heard from outer space. And in the opening scene, I don't want to give too much away, something bad happens. And Michael has to find out what's going on and stop it so that the world will be protected. But he can't do it without Lauren. And they haven't spoken for 20 years because she's just so hurt by how he's treated her. And they have to come together to find the answers to these mysterious signals. And these are all based on real signals that NASA has picked up, that some of these radio telescopes have picked up, that they haven't explained. And I mix all different kinds of mythos together. I like to find the truth and then blur the lines. So I'm a big fan of...
Do you reference the WOW signal?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. But I'm really big into Sumerian lore. So I go back to a lot of the Sumerian legends and the ancient astronaut theory in this book. And I kind of play on multiple different mythologies and just kind of mix them together and then blur the edges.
So you're pulling from Eric Van Daniken as well.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
This is, I'm going to have to get this. Is there can you buy them all together? Is there
There's a box set for the first 6. You can get that it's $9.99 off of Amazon. It's all ebooks. That's the only way you can get a box set currently is the ebooks, but there's also Audible and then paperback.
Okay. Awesome. That sounds right up my. I'm a terrible reader. I've talked about this so many times. It is so frustrating. I was told by a doctor that I have late onset ADHD, and that's why I have such a problem with reading. I mean, I can remember reading in high school. I read books. I read the required,
British lit and all that fun stuff.
yeah, and I mean, it just bored me to tears, but I could get through it. And now when I open a book, I get through half a page and all of a sudden my brain kicks into, wonder how Joe's doing. Haven't talked to Joe in a while. Oh shit, I forgot to write the check out. Oh, tonight's trash night. I got to take the trash out. And then I'm like, where was I? And then I got to go back to the beginning again and I got to start reading, and I don't get any further than I did the last time. And my brain kicks into all the other stuff. So it's an effort for me to.
It is a challenge for me, even as an author. I read a lot, but I've gotten to the point where I'm very reliant on audiobooks. One of my reference books that I have is the biography of Jerusalem. And I was reading that to get ready for writing the The Lost Templar. And I just couldn't focus on the print was so small. And even with my glasses, I was just really struggling. So I got the audiobook, 56 hours. And I listened to every bit of it and then went and got the paperback copy. I already had the ebook, but I got the paper. I've got 3 versions of this book because it was so influential into my writing, because I write a lot of Templar lore.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get it right. So I have several books that I read, but that one was one of my favorites because I was able to get so much out of it. And the audiobook was just enthralling. And I was driving, it was when we were getting ready to move, and I was driving back and forth between Oklahoma and Arkansas, like 2 or 3 times a week. I was in the road for multiple hours. And so I finished that book in just a little over a week and a half, just driving back and forth.
Yeah.
Hard to take notes when you're driving, but I'm a safety professional, so I don't try to do that.
My son suggested that I do audiobooks.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. I work 6 minutes from home.
Yeah, you don't get that long
It's
commute.
like I'm not even going to be able to get it to start. I won't get through a paragraph before I get to work. So
yeah, I get that. I've been lately. It's been in the bubble bath because I spend a lot of time in the bubble bath after a long day of hiking. It's like, okay, I need to soak for a little bit. I'll listen while I'm hiking, but then I get in the tub and I turn it back on and just enjoy.
So hiking,
mm-hmm.
You spend a good deal of time in the outdoors.
I do, always have.
And I get the impression that there is something to that might fall in lines with a topic that I discuss pretty readily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something out there, and I'd like to know what it is. I believe the truth is out there, and I want to find it.
Nice X-Files.
Every chance I get.
That is still, I don't know what the last year it was that it aired, but it is still something that I go back to, and it's just a great show. Yeah. When I pitched my book series, I pitched it to the publishers. This is the X-Files meets the Da Vinci Code meets Expedition Unknown. So yeah, I rely on it pretty heavily. I got the, where is it? Right there?
Yep.
No, there it is.
I see it.
The lunchbox.
Yeah.
That was actually a gift from a guy that works with my son, who ended up contacting him saying, hey, my brother and I had some pretty weird experiences in Upper Michigan while we were hunting, and we want to talk to your dad about it. So
nice.
After we did that show, he sent me that. That was a nice
That's cool
addition to the studio.
Yeah, I've been interested in the outdoors since I was a little kid. When I was very small, my grandfather worked in the pipeline, and we spent some time in the Pacific Northwest, lived in Bellingham, which is right on the Canadian border. And we would go out into the woods on the weekend. We'd camp, we'd hike, interesting things afoot in the Pacific Northwest. So that was kind of where I learned about Bigfoot. He was my first monster. I wasn't even 3 when I first heard about Bigfoot.
I didn't say he was my first love.
He was my first monster, but I loved him because he was so interesting and I wanted to know more. We later ended up in northern New Mexico, and we'd hike all over there and up into Colorado. Very interesting things happen in Colorado. I don't know if anybody's heard some of the stories lately coming out of central Colorado. There's been some recent sightings up there. Of course, Oklahoma, which is my home base where I lived primarily,
Right.
has a very heavily forested area in southeastern Oklahoma. There's a little town called Honebby where there's quite a few Bigfoot sightings, and I've gone down for Bigfoot festivals and conferences and things down there. And now I'm in central Arkansas, and if you pull up the National Bigfoot map, within 10 miles, there's multiple sightings from where I live.
How do you know how recent?
Some of them aren't that recent, 2010. But just this weekend, I had to go up to Springfield for a writers conference. And as I was coming back, I had stopped and pulled up my Facebook to share some pictures and found that there had been a sighting right by where I was at that moment. And of course, I wanted to go do some investigating, but of course, I was on a time schedule. I had to get home, and I wasn't able to. But it was relatively close to where I was at that moment when I saw it. So, quite a few sightings in Arkansas and Missouri. We're one of the most heavily forested states in the United States, shy of Pacific Northwest. Lots of caves, lots of hidden places, lots of valleys, lots of timber. Of course, the legend of Boggy Creek.
Sure.
Right here in Arkansas,
Yeah.
About 2 hours from where I live. So,
Have you ever gone?
I have not, but it's on my bucket list.
It would be on mine too if I was close enough.
They do a big conference in the spring and in the fall, so I'm hoping I can get that on my schedule. I just haven't been able to make it work yet.
I'm about 37 minutes south of Dowagiac, Michigan, and the Dewey Lake Monster.
Mm-hmm.
Is something that I grew up with around here. And up until 2 years ago, I had the pleasure of hosting a Bigfoot conference there called Bigfoot and Brews.
Oh, cool.
At a brewery that was
Nice.
right there at Dewey Lake. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. I try to make it to any of those conferences that are within a decent distance from my house. I don't always make it to so many of them, but there's a big paranormal conference here in Arkansas. It's going to be in Little Rock in October, and I've already signed up for a book table at that one. Maybe next year they'll let me speak. I just didn't get here for this year.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, let's get into your experiences out in the wilds.
Well, I like to think I have had 3, maybe now 4, what I call close encounters. Haven't seen one, but I've come really close.
Okay.
The first one was actually in Honebby, Oklahoma. I had gone down to Tallahena for a friend of mine who was having a book signing. And he said, I live right there in Honebby. He said, there's a really cool sign called, it says welcome to the home of the Bigfoot Highway. He said, go down there, get some pictures under the sign. It's just really cool. He says, I live about a mile from there. Just check it out. And so I've always wanted to go to Honebby, and I've never been. And so we drove down there, and it's just a 2-lane highway. There's a little building across the street from where the sign is. So my husband pulled over and parked, and we got out, and he's taking some pictures. And there's this smell, this god awful rotting meat meets cat litter meets rendering plant. I mean, it was awful. And as a safety inspector, I've been to paper mills and foundries and rendering plants. I've smelled everything bad you could possibly smell in a factory. And this topped all of that. It was horrible. And my husband's like, what is that? He's like, there's something dead around here. And
did you find that smell was very local to where you were at? I mean, could you move out of it and not smell it?
No, it was right there. But in that intersection, it was everywhere I went, I could still smell it.
Yeah.
Even after we got in the car and drove a little bit, you could still smell it. So I messaged my friend as we were going back because my husband was driving. So I messaged him and I said, do you guys have a rendering plant or a paper mill in that area? And he's like, no. He said, what did you smell? Describe it to me. Like he knew immediately. So I told him what it smelled like. And he goes, that was the booger, which is his word for Bigfoot.
Right.
He said, we smell it all the time and it comes and goes. He said, but we have those kind of experiences all the time.
Okay.
So that was near miss number 1. I've smelled it. Number 2, a couple years ago, I went to Blue Ridge, Georgia with some of my girlfriends for a writer's retreat. And we knew we were going to be near Ellijay, which is the home of Expedition Bigfoot. If anybody is anywhere ever near Ellijay, Georgia, just north of Atlanta, please make time to go in. That is a fantastic museum. They gave us advanced information to connect with a girl they call Amanda the Bigfoot Lady. She's fantastic. She said, just ask for me when you get there. I'll give you the tour. And so we had gone to the museum, and they have stations where you can put on headphones and listen to some of the recordings of the Bigfoot calls.
Yeah.
So we had done all that, and they have, Josh Gates' footprint from the Yeti is in there. And they didn't tell me that before I got there because I totally fangirled when I saw it because I'm a big fan of Josh Gates, if that doesn't show by now.
I think we all are. I mean,
Yeah.
I've enjoyed his the various iterations of his shows for a number of years. My kids basically grew up on his show.
Yep.
I have not watched it yet, but my daughter texted me and told me how good the latest one is with Gates and the the whole oceanic the Titan sub. She said,
yes,
you
need to watch it.
She said, hey, you got to watch it.
Yeah, it was good. So anyway, we did the museum thing, and then we went up to our cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And the next morning we went on a hike, and they had storms that blew through overnight. So they had some down trees, and the guys were out with the chainsaws cutting up these down trees that were over the hiking trail. And we came across one of them, and he had gotten his chainsaw bogged down in the tree. So he had to go get another chainsaw to get his chainsaw free. And he was visiting with us as we were, trying to climb over this tree. And he was helping us over. And he said, how far are you guys going? Are you going to go to the waterfall, or are you going to go on up to the tower? How far are you going to go? And I'm like, well, we know this is a really long trail. We'll probably just go maybe a mile or 2, and then we'll be back. And he goes, okay, I'll keep my eye out for you. He said, just keep an eye out. And I'm like, well, that's kind of an odd statement. He says, well, there's trees down. He says, just keep an eye out. So we had continued on our way, and maybe 15, 20 minutes later, that chainsaw fired up, and you could hear it across the valley. It was loud. And there came this blood-curdling scream, like a woman screaming at that chainsaw. I mean, I could just see my mother. What are you doing with that chainsaw? Just not happy about all the ruckus. And so we stopped and kind of looked at each other, and it was like, which direction was that from? And it was kind of behind us. So we kept going forward, and we finished our hike. We didn't go that far, but when we came back, the chainsaw was gone, the guy was gone, the tree was gone.
Oh, he didn't keep an eye out for you.
He didn't wait. He's like, I'm out of here. So we've heard it. And my co-writer that I was with, we sat down afterwards and did a debrief, and I'm like, did you hear what I heard? And I said, describe to me in your words what you heard. And she told me what she heard, and I described in my words what I had heard. And we had another friend that didn't go on the hike with us that we were explaining to her what had happened. And our stories were exactly the same. And it was just like, it was exactly what we'd heard in the recordings at the museum. Of course, we had to let Amanda know because, they track that kind of thing up there. So that was...
So for our edification, what did you hear?
It was literally a scream, this high-pitched, long howl. There was almost a bit of a yodel to it. There was a little bit of a fluctuation in the audio, but very, very high-pitched, very visceral, very animalistic. Just this howl. And I don't really know how else to describe it. It was exactly like what we had heard.
What time of day was it?
It would have been morning, so probably 9-ish. And it was very overcast. It was still kind of spitty, rainy, chilly. It was early April. Yeah. So in the mountains, it was kind of cool.
So when you heard it, you said it was behind you, so I assume that means that it would have been between you and Mr. Chainsaw Man?
It might have even been beyond him to another part because it was the trail kind of wove in, and it could have just kind of been off to the side from where we had been.
Interesting.
But it was a valley, so that sound could have carried Lord knows how far.
And the friend of yours that was with you, the reaction, what, I mean,
her first words after our eyes unbugged out, her first words to me was, "Somebody doesn't like that chainsaw."
Interesting.
Yeah. And when she meant body, somebody, she didn't mean a human.
Yeah. Was there any point in time where you just kind of, all right, that can't be what it was. So what could it have been?
Yeah, the scientist in me, because I'm like Lauren, I'm a scientist. I want the data, I want the facts. I'm going through, was it an elk? Was it an owl? Was it, what other wildlife lives up here that might have made that kind of noise? Was it somebody imitating, a creature like this? And I can't say for 100% that it wasn't one of those things, but I'm telling you, I don't think it was. Everything in my gut tells me it was the booger.
With the way the valley was, would you have been able to scream and have it reverberate the way that did?
I sang opera in college. I don't think I could have hit that note.
That high pitched?
It was just, yeah. I mean, there was a timbre to it, but it was a note. I don't think I could have recreated it.
Did it have quite a sustain?
Yes.
Any guess to how long you think it went?
4 or 5 seconds at least, maybe longer.
And you say that what you heard directly correlated to the recordings that you heard at the museum.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because there's several very good audio recordings out there, and my personal belief is that whatever that is out there, they captured it on audio.
Yeah.
But there is such a significant difference between, you've got the Ron Moorhead Sierra sounds, and those are unique. You have the Ohio howl, which is unique unto itself. And then you have a lot of other, I had a conversation with Ron Moorhead and Scott Nelson about the recordings and how Scott analyzed them for years. And he said they had a gentleman who actually took Ron's recording and ran it through some editing process, and then turned it back into Ron, saying that they had recorded their own version of it, and it was quite obvious it was Ron's recording. They had just done some slight altering to it.
Yeah.
But and I've talked to others who, they get these audio recordings, and I mean, some of it just sounds otherworldly. So I'm not so sure. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I
have a video up on my TikTok page. It's one of the first ones I ever posted to TikTok, and it's one of the reasons I'm on TikTok. My husband and I were sitting by a campfire down in southeastern Oklahoma about 4 years ago, and having a cup of coffee, just sitting listening to the woods, and just this in the distance you hear this whoop, and it just gets higher and higher. And of course, everybody comes on and chimes in. It goes, "Oh, that's an elk," or "It's an owl." I'm like, I'm not saying what it is. I'm just saying, what is it? Because I can't explain it. Didn't sound like any of those to me.
Well, you bring up owls, and so I went, and I've told this story 1,000 times, but I went to the Manistee National Forest in Yeah, it's about mid Michigan in the lower peninsula. 3-day weekend. It was right when COVID was happening, and you would have thought that the river would have just been packed. And over 3 days, I think maybe we saw five other kayaks and canoes. So it was a really nice, relaxing, very oddly quiet weekend. But one night, sitting out at a campfire, there were 3 of us. We were about 20, maybe not even 20 yards off the shore, and had the fire going. There were 3 of us sitting there. So whoever was beyond us would have seen 3 silhouettes at a campfire. And we kept hearing what sounded like a barred owl, but it didn't sound right. There was it was forced. It sounded like somebody's voice trying to impersonate a barred owl.
Right.
And it kept doing it. And there were 3 of them. And one was directly across the river from us. One was way behind us. And the other one sounded like it was probably on the same side of the river, but up ahead of us. And it kept going back and forth. And it was just the strangest thing. And the one guy mentioned it. I recorded it, and till this day, I'll still go back and I'll listen to it. And I'm like, it doesn't sound right. Don't know what it was, but it doesn't sound right. He excused himself. He decided he had way too many beers. He wanted to go lay down in his hammock. And then there was just the 2 of us. And once it was just the 2 of us, then my buddy John says, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "I did." And he goes, did that sound like a tree knock?" And I said, "Yeah, it did."
Wow.
And so the weird thing was, excuse me, during the time that there were 3 of us there, we had 3 owls and it would always be the one across, the one behind, the one up above, in front. And then it was the same pattern all the time. Then when he got up and it was just the 2 of us, we heard 2 knocks. And that's when I kind of started formulating is like, okay, so is this an indication of like counting? When there were 3 of us at the fire and we could obviously be seen, we had something making 3 calls, and then there'd be a pause, and then there'd be 3 calls, and there'd be pause. And then when he went to bed and it was just the 2 of us, then we would hear knocks, but we would hear 2 in succession and then nothing. And then we'd hear another 2 and then nothing. And then another 2. And I'm like, are they counting? Is that their way of letting people know, okay, there were 3. Oh, no, now there's 2. And I'm telling you, I've been steeped in Bigfoot lore for 90% of my life.
Yeah.
I would say Bigfoot probably started for me at 7. UFOs started at 5. So I turned 60 tomorrow.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So I've been in it for a long time. And it's just, I went to bed. I went to get in my hammock, and anything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. I ordered everything off of Amazon. The hammock was too small. It said it was a 2-person. It barely fit me.
Oh my.
When I first sat down into it, I ripped out the mosquito net. The rain fly was like 3 feet too short. So it rained that night, of course, and my feet are hanging out, so I'm getting soaked.
Oh, no.
It got way colder than it was supposed to get for that weekend. Freezing my ass off. I had pulled socks onto my hands, and I was, I had another shirt wrapped around my face to keep me warm. And it was just an awful, awful experience. All my fault, because I did not do what my buddy John said, which is, hey, make sure you test everything out before we go. And I didn't. I was like, it'll be fine.
Famous last words.
And, so that night I got I got no sleep until I saw sunlight, until it started getting daylight. Then I was able to fall asleep for maybe a half hour, 45 minutes. And then we got up and had breakfast and we started going again. But that night, once I retired to my hammock, and I'm on a pretty fast moving river. I've heard fish breach the water before. I know what that sounds like. It's 2:00 in the morning. I'm laying there firmly convinced in my mind that there's a family of Bigfoot about 10 feet away from me behind a tree laughing at me because I'm so ill prepared. But then I start hearing these large splashes in the water. And, like the sound of picking up a good sized rock, throwing it into a lake, and you hear the bloop before you get the whoosh.
I know that sound.
So what's jumping off the shore of the river? It's not a mink. It's not a beaver. They just slide into the water. They don't make a whole hell of a lot of noise. They're pretty adept at doing that. So at 2:00 in the morning, what if I got some giant fish that just keeps jumping and maybe getting bugs off the top of the water? Possible. But I mean, there was zero sleep. Sleep.
Yeah. Possible versus probable. What's more likely?
Right.
Yeah, that's always the question. And then we've had one other experience. We had gone up to Mount St. Helens because I wanted to kind of fact check myself. I hadn't been there since I was a kid, and I wanted to see kind of how I did with the Veritas Codex, what I could have done differently, and I had a couple things. But we were hiking north of the crater, which is the side that kind of sloughed off. That you remember the video from 1980 on, and it's recovering pretty well. There's very dense new growth in some of the areas, and then there's a river that runs along there. So we were hiking kind of down by that river, and my husband's looking at the birds and the trees and the sky, and he's just enjoying the day, and I'm looking for prints. I had my head down the whole day, and I didn't see anything. But a couple of days later, there was an article in the local newspaper that somebody had found tracks on that trail the day we had been there.
Oh, really?
And I didn't see any. And that's all I looked for. I mean, I was totally 100% focused in looking for footprints. And all I saw were dogs, deer, the occasional small critter, and my husband's, Reeboks. Not Bigfoot.
Well, it's funny. I just I had a conversation with author Gianno Cromley. He's got a book coming out, I believe, July 15th, and it's a work of fiction, Bigfoot centric. It's about the topic, but we got through the story of the book and how he decided to write it, why he decided to write it, and all that. And I got the feeling that he was kind of holding back on something. And I asked him if he had ever had an experience. And much like the experience that you talked about, the scream, he indicated to me that, and he was from Montana, but he and his wife were vacationing in the Manistee Forest of Michigan, which is right where I had the weird owls and all that. Mm-hmm. And they were renting an Airbnb. They were outside one night, and he had, I believe he said their dog was a Great Pyrenees, which are big dogs, and they're not scared of much. He said the whole evening was pretty uneventful, and then all of a sudden, he said, they could hear the coyotes yipping in the background, and everything was hunky-dory because that was normal stuff. And he said then they heard this scream that just deafened them.
Yeah.
And he said his dog immediately went to all fours and stretched as far as he could with the lead that they had on him, and was doing everything he could do to get to the wood line that separated, that they were they were in a clearing of sorts, but whatever was going on, it was in the tree line, and that dog was aware of it.
Yeah. Animals are so perceptive. I mean, for sure.
Interesting how similarities, but
Yeah. Yeah. And, I suspect that there's, that we want there to be genetic diversity in any kind of a species. This is one of the things Lauren's talking about in the book, because she's a biological anthropologist. And I think there may be different languages too. And that's why screams might sound different in the Pacific Northwest versus Blue Ridge Mountains of Georgia. Right. And I suspect that may be why there's so much variation in what these different recordings sound like.
Absolutely.
So, that the descriptions may be different, but it just may be a different dialect or a different language.
So how much time do you spend researching the topic? Not for necessarily for a topic of a book, but I mean, are you a weekend warrior, or do you tend to get a little deeper on the subject? Or
I have been a weekend warrior because I worked a full-time job. I ran a nonprofit for many years. I worked for state government. I was a federally trained investigator for the state. And so I would just do a lot of my research in nights and evenings, go hiking when I could, read what I can, watch what I can on TV. But I've recently retired. So this is now my full-time gig.
Congratulations.
And thank you very much. Been a long time in coming. It's actually my second retirement. So it's nice having those little bit of benefits come in.
Man, I can't even get retired once.
Well, I started at the state when I wasn't quite 18. So I got my years of service in before I hit 50. So I retired from the state and then went to work in the nonprofit and did that for almost 10 years. So technically it wasn't a retirement, but it is in my book because I'm not doing it anymore. But, I have a strong love for occupational safety. I also have a degree in emergency management. So I have been to events like the Murrah Federal Building bombing in Oklahoma City. I worked that disaster. I went to the World Trade Center. Was it Hurricane Katrina? And then all the tornadoes in central Oklahoma.
Good Lord.
I did all kinds of emergency management. Finished my degree in that in 2018, a week before my son graduated high school. That was my goal. Get my degree before the kids did.
I feel like I need to say thank you for your service.
Oh, well, thank you for your support, because I consider myself a third responder. I was never one of the first boots on the ground. I was always there to make sure the workers doing the cleanup were protected. But that was very cathartic for me, and it kind of really helped drive the writing bug for me. But I also got to do a little paranormal investigation while I was down in New Orleans during Katrina. I'd inspected a charity hospital because it had been occupied for 10 days after the disaster right down by the Superdome. Some very weird things happened to us while we were in there. We were the only two people in the building. My partner was an industrial hygienist out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So we're walking through this 27-story building. It's a full city block. The original building was built in 1753, and they've just added on and expanded over the decades. And we would see things out of the corner of our eye. We would hear things would move, things we couldn't explain. So that gave me some opportunity to do some paranormal investigation as part of my job. I mean, it was just something that was there. But I get out and I try to explore, and I try to listen to stories, and I talk to locals. That's the thing about being a writer, is we want to hear the stories, because those stories are things that we can adapt for our own personal benefit. So I spend a lot of time in the woods, and now my husband and I, we like to hike. So we've got this whole new area to explore, this whole new state. Devil's Den. Oh my gosh, Devil's Den is so cool. And there's a reason they call it Devil's Den.
Sounds ominous.
Yes. Again, lots of caves, lots of water sources here. We've had nothing but rain and all that since we got here. So it's just been an opportunity to get out and do even more investigation. I'm also a family genealogist. I've got my family tree back to the year 200 because I like history. Yeah. And I spend a lot of time in cemeteries. I spend a lot of time in libraries. I spend a lot of time in archives, anywhere I can find documentation, anything to support what I'm working on. I will spend that time to do it.
Yeah.
Now, my fourth book, which is the Monk's Grimoire, I wrote that one in 23 days, start to finish, first draft, 23 days. And that's not normal because
I was going to say, that sounds very inspired.
right, there's a lot of history that goes into it's set in Prague. So there's a lot of history. I've never been to Prague. I have to get up on, I pull up Google Earth to see what does the streets look like? Where's this cafe? I'm looking at maps and I'm watching videos and I'm pulling up news articles and, doing everything I can do online before I have to go to the library or start making phone calls. I have a friend in Slovenia, and at one point in the book, they get to Slovenia. So I messaged him and I said, "Hey, I'm writing a part of this book in Slovenia. Do you want to be in the book?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, I do." I said, "Okay, this is what I need from you in order to be in my book. I need some help with the language. I need to know about the location. Give me some suggestions for some places that would be really spooky." And so a lot of the research came from my friend who said, "Okay, you need to have him go here and then have him stop by my place because he's a chef. I'll make him a burger." He runs a little burger barn. So he's in the book. I've written him in his little burger shop.
Fantastic.
So if you're in Slovenia, that part of the book is true. You can go and get a burger and some poutine because he's Canadian and he lives in Slovenia.
That's awesome.
And so all the language and, I need a phrase for this. Here's what I want her to say. And he'd tell me how to write it and tell me how to spell it, how to use it in a sentence and all that kind of stuff. So, I'll get inspiration and research from any source I can get it.
Yeah. That's interesting. I've had this conversation with my girlfriend. It's like when you run into an author that's so prolific that, how do you keep coming up with the ideas? And, like we started off talking about Stephen King. It's like, good Lord, man.
Mm-hmm.
What must your brain be like?
15 tabs open on this screen, 32 tabs open on that screen. The music's coming from somewhere and I don't know where. For me, I had to be very efficient because I was writing when my kids were little. The series started, like I said, I started writing in 2008, 2009. And my kids were very small. My daughter was 4. My son was, he would have been 8, 9, somewhere around there. So I'm a mom. I have a job. I'm working for the state. I'm on call 24/7. So I had to be very efficient. And I had never written a book before. Well, I'd kind of been writing, but never really a project like this. So it took quite a bit of time. The first book probably took over a year. And I had a critique group that I would go meet with, and we would read sections and give each other feedback. So it took some time, but I type 145 words a minute. And that's because my brain goes so fast. I have to keep my hands moving. And it's a skill that I have honed over the years. I took a typing class in high school and I walked in and the teacher saw my name on the roster and she said, "Oh, I know your brother. You won't pass my class." So apparently my brother had her before. And, I like proving people wrong. So I learned to be a very efficient typist. 145 words the last time I took a typing test, and I broke the computer at 150. So I'm going with the lowest of the 3 tests I took, which was 145.
I don't know your age, but I gave mine away. So when we were in high school, what was the average?
Oh gosh, 45 was decent. It'd get you a state job if you could type 45 words a minute. I couldn't when I started at the state, but that was one of the things I did when I first started was I would type up these reports from the safety inspectors when they would go out. And that's kind of how I became a safety professional was I learned from them. Yeah. And I would type up those reports and then I would go and ask them, "Okay, what does this mean? Well, what is this? Show me what that looks like. Did you take a picture? Can I see the picture? And I would put on music when I'm typing and I would try to type whatever the lyrics were. That was one of the practice things that I would do. Now I put on Hamilton, which if you've ever seen Hamilton, it's, rap music. It's super fast. I can type to Hamilton.
Whoa. That's impressive in itself.
Yeah.
Betsy, we're at an hour here. As far as Bigfoot goes, I mean, it's obvious you have an interest in it.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think they are?
I think we are dealing with an unknown primate.
Just simply a undiscovered North American
Yes.
primate.
We have a primate that has not been genetically identified. We have a primate that has not been physically identified. There was a time when gorillas were thought to be a myth because nobody had really ever seen them and they never documented it.
Absolutely.
And I don't think there's any difference. Our world is so vast and the forests are so thick. One of the hikes we did up in the Pacific Northwest, away from Mount St. Helens, kind of over towards the coast, we walked right up on deer and they're standing right in front of us and we didn't see it until they moved. Everything there looks like Bigfoot. The trees look like it's just this moss hanging off. Everything's wet. It's all brown. It's so hard to see what's right there that I think most people will miss it. And it's gotten worse with the cell phones in front of our faces. We're not going to see things if we don't turn those things off and use our own senses to look for things. But again, technology can also help us because we have, heat, the thermal cameras and the FLIRs and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a good chance that we could find the answers, but I still think there's a lot of work to be done.
Do you ever entertain the idea that they could be something more closely related to us?
I'd like to think so, but who knows?
Because I can't fall away from that. And I think, if I'm being honest, I think that is an association that I put on it rather than anything else.
Yeah. I would like to think that they're pretty intelligent because they've been able to avoid us. That's smart.
Yeah.
Because, we're not necessarily the best friends for people in general.
Not.
Yeah. So I do believe there has to be some kind of a genetic diversity. That means there's not just one, because people are like, well, how many Bigfoots do you think are out there? Well, you've got to have that breeding population in order to maintain that diversity. So I think there has to be different populations of them spread out. And if you look at the maps where there have been sightings, it's pretty widespread. I mean, even in Oklahoma City Metro, there had been sightings in Edmond, Oklahoma, sightings just outside of Oklahoma City, because we're encroaching on their territory.
Right. I have friends that live in the Metro Detroit area, and the Metro parks there. Some of the evidence that they've collected from those parks is pretty astounding.
Yeah, and we have deer walk into in Oklahoma City, they had deer walking into the middle of the city. And, if deer can get into the middle of the city, anything else could too. Whatever would like to eat a deer would come right on in because there's the buffet right there at Lake Hefner. But Oklahoma did something a couple years ago that was very controversial. They passed a law creating a hunting season for Bigfoot.
Okay, I heard about that. I remember hearing about that for a good while. Was that a literal, or was that not an attempt to generate tourists?
It was an actual law that passed, but the intent was that it could not be killed or injured, because that was going to lead to people getting killed and injured, which was my argument.
Right.
I did write my legislators about that because I have some very passionate feelings about preservation and conservation, particularly of the people who would be involved in something like that as a safety professional. But it also helped drive the generation of tourism, because that area of the state relies so heavily on tourism. If you go to Travel Oklahoma's website, or travelok.gov, I think, their media campaign right now is Bigfoot. So
funny.
Yeah.
And I'm this weekend, Friday, we leave Friday morning. We're heading back to visit her family, which is on the far east side of Ohio. She literally lived about 6 minutes away from Salt Fork State Park, which is a very well-known area for Bigfoot as well. And I was not aware, but in April, they opened a new building on the property of the park, and it's ecobiology something. And when you pull up the pictures of the new building, there's a Bigfoot exhibit in there. And the first picture I saw was kind of a cartoony looking Harry and the Hendersons looking Bigfoot, with a bunch of stuff around it. And then I thought, well, that's cute. It would be something to look at. But then I saw 2 more pictures, and there is literally a full-sized, very, very realistic looking statue. It's not even a statue. It's like the hair and everything. It looks like a stuffed, very, very cool. I saw that and I was like, okay, all right. We got something to go check out now. So
yeah, sounds like it.
Betsey Kulakowski, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for making the time to do this. Do me a favor again, let everybody know the book series is the Veritas Codex.
That's correct.
Let everybody know your socials, websites, where they can get the books.
All right. So my website's a great place to start. It's author.betseykulakowski.com. And if you've got show notes, spell that out for them.
I will.
That you can find all my social medias. You can also find my podcast. I'm a co-host of the Unfreaking Believable podcast. We tell some paranormal stories, some inspirational stories. It's a little mix of everything.
Unbelievable.
Unfreaking believable. If you have an unfreaking believable story, we'd like to hear it.
Well,
so
I want to throw my hat in that ring because I have a lifetime of unusual activity that I have been blessed with being able to endure. So yes. I would be more than happy.
How we get our guests is if you go to our website, ufbpodcast.com, there's a questionnaire. It's a Google form. Fill that out. And that the team, there's 3 of us that do it. And we go through and we kind of try to balance out our schedule so that something different every week or every 2 weeks when we do it. And then we schedule from that. So that's the first place to start is to fill out that questionnaire if you want to be considered for a guest. If you've got any kind of an unfreaking believable story, whether it's near-death experience, a moment of truth, paranormal event, things like that, we love to hear those kinds of stories. It's very positive and uplifting and, family-friendly show. So go check it out. But then you can also find me. I'm very active on Instagram at author Betsy K. I'm also on Threads, same call name, and on TikTok, same call name. On Twitter, which I refuse to call it anything else, it is Bakooli, Bkoolie. That's my username there. I'm on Facebook. Did I say TikTok, Instagram? I have a Pinterest board for every one of my books. Because Lauren is the queen of campfire cuisine. All her recipes are up on my Pinterest boards for each of the books. So you can check out that if that's really more your speed than the paranormal. If you like a good campfire dinner, she can help you get one.
Interesting. Kind of the mixed media going on there.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty much my inspo board when I'm writing. I'll start a board and I'll keep it private while I'm writing the book. And when I'm trying to come up with the symbols for the covers, I will pin them onto my board. Here's my idea. Maybe I'll go this way. And then inevitably, by the time I get ready to send it off to the publisher and say, okay, here's what I'd like to have on the cover. I can see one of them back here. I may change my mind at the last minute, but I have all my ideas on that board. If I travel somewhere or if I've got pictures or something like that, I'll share them on Pinterest as well.
Fantastic. Betsy,
and the books. Let's talk about where you can find the books.
Yes.
Amazon, Audible, Kobo, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, Walmart.com, Target.com. We print on demand, so you typically have to order it. If you go into an independent bookstore somewhere or a library and they don't have it, ask them to get it because they can order it for you. And that helps me. And I'm a big fan of libraries. I spent a lot of time writing in libraries when my kids were little. So it doesn't bother me at all when somebody says, well, I got it out of the library. I know that you don't get paid for that. I do get paid for that. So please ask your local library to carry it. And that helps us all out.
Betsey Kulakowski, it's been an awesome conversation. I've had a lot of fun with this. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
With you again anytime.
I'd love it.
Thanks.
Good night.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.